Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wellness with EAC. I'm Nicole Guanzura, and I have the distinct privilege of being your host. Welcome back to another episode. If we don't know each other already, I am a really big advocate of career wellness and well-being. On this podcast, we're talking a lot about how are you managing your mental health, how are you really managing your finances, and most importantly, how are you doing all of that while also navigating your professional development journey. And it's not just about what's going on in the office, it's also about how that translates to home, how that translates to the whole you. And I love the conversations we have on this podcast because your thoughts and inputs around this topic as well have been really amazing. Who am I? I am a mom. I am a career development professional, and I'm someone who's really passionate about women's ministry. So if you are new, welcome to the show. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. It's so good to have you. So, some weeks, as you already know, it's a solo episode. It's you and I. We're kicking back, chatting one-on-one. But as I promised you in episode 16, I have an amazing guest for you today. Today, we are talking about wellness in the job search. Raise your hand if you have ever had a challenging time finding a job, trying to find your position in the workplace, trying to figure out what you're going to do, or if you have also faced that dreaded L. And I'm not talking about losing, I'm talking about layoff. My guest today is the perfect person to talk to you about what wellness in the workplace looks like, what wellness in the job search looks like, because she has experienced some of these things. She is someone who really strives on challenging the status quo in the workplace. She is the chief talent advisor and founder of Super Bloom Talent. And I'm so excited that she is here to talk to you today about the work that she's doing, the things that she's passionate about, but most importantly, share the story behind all of that and how she has come to be today in her career and in her work. So I'm going to turn it over to our amazing guest for today. Please welcome Danae Gabriel. Danae, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Nicole. I'm so happy to be a part of this, and I really appreciate you, asking me to join and share my story here.
Of course, of course. Oh my goodness. When we first chatted and I heard about the things that you were doing and just seeing the work that Super Bloom Talent is doing, it was an easy no-brainer. You've got to be on the show. The people need to know more. So, please tell us, a little bit more about you. What does your background look like? Your education, your work background. Feel free to take us all the way back to the place where the story is going to tie into where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like Nicole said, my name's Danae Gabriel. I am the Chief Talent Advisor for Super Bloom Talent. And I guess I'll start by just giving you a little bit of a background on my story and where I come from. Originally born and raised in Bakersfield, California. People call it the armpit of California, and could probably put two and two together. It's not a lot going on there. Lots of agriculture, and just, people just trying to kind of get by, I would say.
Hmm.
Was raised by a single mother, just me and my brother in the household, and we struggled financially. Like that was a big thing for us growing up, is we didn't have the fancy things, and that's a positive for me now because I don't
Mhm.
yearn for that as much. But yeah, so I was the first in my family to go to college. I attended UC Irvine. And I majored in political science. I'll be honest, I changed my major about 3 times. So landed on political science, thought I wanted to go to law school and decided that wasn't really for me. I'm very much a people person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, after I graduated, I went straight into sales, realized I'm pretty good at sales, but I really wanted to broaden my horizon and do something a little bit, more than just, I was in property management at that time. I didn't want to just, help people find apartments. I wanted to do a little bit more than that. So I started my career, or my recruiting career in IT staffing, like a lot of other recruiters do, and found that I wanted, again, to do a little bit more. So I hopped into more of an operations management position. And I learned so much. I learned a lot about business. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about others. And how do you navigate the workforce as, this is another part for me as a Black woman. How do I navigate the workplace?
Mm-hmm.
What do I want, people to see and say about me? And so, um, COVID hit, and like a lot of people, I think you and I talked about this, but when COVID hit, it really was a wake up call for me where I didn't want to work 10-hour days anymore. I didn't want to commute an hour, down the five. And at that point, I had been living in San Diego. And so I started my own consulting business. At that point, it was Gabriel Consulting Group, and I was doing something very similar to what we're doing now, but a little more heavier focus on the people operation side of things. Um, and then, like you said, I mean, I also too experienced a layoff. So went through my consulting company. I ended up going full time with one of the clients I was working with,
Mm-hmm.
and experienced a layoff May 3rd of 2023. And at that point, I mean, I I really had to take a good look at myself and what I wanted out of my career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I realized, I already have an LLC set up. I have this thing that I'd created a while back. Why not get that started again? And so that's when I decided to kind of pursue Super Bloom Talent a little bit more. And I found I'm passionate about diversifying, the workforce and
Mm-hmm.
what we do. It's so great because we start at the beginning of the process, and getting opportunities in front of more diverse talent, is what I would say. So, no, that was a little long-winded. Hopefully that was good.
Yes, that was fantastic. Thank you. And I think taking us back, right? Because one of the goals with this podcast is to be able to humanize the experience and the person beyond the title, beyond what they're typically seeing on social media. There's a real person who's gone through some real things and has also gotten professional experience. It's not just lived experience that you're able to talk about this. You have professional experience, you have education and things to back it up to make this perfect combination. So this is really great background. And so just thinking about what you said, right? You just the journey so far and experiencing the layoff and working with some clients, starting a consulting business before, and then that motivation to start, another one, and in the success that you're in with Super Bloom Talent now, what advice would you give somebody that wants to start a business, maybe has not seen that first business or even second business quite work out in the way that they've envisioned, but you persevered and here you are today. So, what advice would you give that person to keep going?
So give yourself a little grace. I started two other, well, so Gabriel Consulting Group, and then I also had an e-commerce business that I started as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think Gabriel Consulting Group was really successful, and now it's kind of morphed into Super Bloom Talent. But that e-commerce business didn't do very well. It was more of like a hobby at that time. And so I think it's taking what you're learning each time you try to go after something. And if it doesn't pan out right, I mean, and I hear people say it all the time, is like through failure, you learn the most.
Mm-hmm.
And through success, you learn a lot as well. But I think it's being able to give yourself grace, knowing that you will persevere. And if you keep going, I mean, the only way for you to not be successful is if you stop. Right. And that's what I remind myself. That's what I tell myself is each day you don't have to be at 120, 150%. You just have to keep going. And that's the key, right? And you're going to hit roadblocks. I mean, girl, it's tough building a business. It is tough.
Yes.
And there are times when I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. And
Mm-hmm.
then there are times when I'm on the top of the mountain, I'm like, yes, we did this, right? So
Yes.
it's being able to weather those storms so that you can get to the top of the mountain and really feel that success and that win.
That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that because it is I've talked to seven-figure multi-million-dollar business owners that still say, yeah, you know what? There's a part of me that's always going to be a little bit concerned about making payroll. And
Mhm.
so it never quite,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
that is the little like bug that keeps you going and keeps you from being too relaxed in the entrepreneurial journey.
Mhm.
But I really appreciate that advice that you gave to just keep going because that is also very applicable to the job seekers. I know we'll get into that too, but just keep going because that job didn't work out. You only need one at the end of the day. You only need
Yes.
one that's going to say yes, that's going to bring you in, that's going to give you that paycheck. Well, for some now it's one in a side hustle or whatever that
Yeah.
looks like. But realistically, you need one to say yes to get you out of what seems like what may be a dire situation to get you onto the other side so you can breathe a little bit more again. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that advice. So, thinking about this season of life right now or in business, what are you most proud of?
Yeah. Well, I am a mother.
Mhm.
I have a 2.5-year-old boy. And I think you've talked about this too, is like being a mother and building a business. It's no small feat. It is tough. And before I had a kid, I could kind of check out after work was ended. I can't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
that's okay. I mean, I love him to death and each day is so special with him. He's such a crack up. He's always making me laugh. So, I mean, that part of it, but we don't talk about it enough, right? Like that job never ends.
Hmm.
And so it's how do you navigate and then how do you also like separate the two so that it doesn't start to affect your family when you are building a business or when you're struggling in your professional background or a professional experience. Like, how do you navigate that? Um,
Mm.
and so I would say that's the biggest thing is like I've been able to figure out how to balance that, how to do well in my professional career, but also how to be there for my family and show up when I need to.
Mm.
Is probably the biggest thing.
And that is a beautiful thing. There's always some kind of balance of life and work happening at all times. But I think as moms, sometimes we forget to take pride in that. So I love that that was your example. That is your example. Because it's not easy. As you said, it's not easy, but it is worth it when you think about your why, when you do want to just say, you know what, forget it. Then you think about, well, I have that flexibility to dash out for a little bit if he needs something, or if it's a doctor's appointment. Honestly, if he just needs extra snuggles,
Love
you
the
have
snuggles.
all the snuggles. I don't know if your son is like this, but my son is in this phase. He just turned 3 and he's in this like, I'm all about my mommy. I get kisses and hugs all day long. And I'm like, never grow out of this. I want this for life. And I know it's limited time, so I
Yeah.
have to cherish that.
100%. Yeah. Whenever I'm like, can I get a hug? He's like, hugs and kisses too, and kisses too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, please. I need this. So no matter how bad my day is, that will always put me in a good mood.
Yes, yes, you can't. We call them mama lovings on this
Hmm.
side, but you can't forget the kisses. So I appreciate you sharing that. And just a reminder for mamas to keep going. Keep going. It is all right. And even on those worst days, those tiny humans have a way of reminding us to keep pushing forward and reminding us of our why. So, just reflecting on, I know you talked about this a little bit, just kind of shared a snippet, but can you take us a bit deeper into a time where you have overcome adversity?
Yeah.
And it could be in your professional experience, in your life, or just in the business right now. What is that one season or experience that you just overcome and can talk about it now on this side?
Yeah. I think, I had a lot of different examples I could provide.
Hmm.
I like my family struggled with, drug and alcohol abuse too. And so I thought about talking about that a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, but I think what's really needed right now is more conversations around layoffs and how that impacts us, not only professionally, but personally.
Yeah.
It's so hard to not internalize that. And we've seen
Hmm.
some of it on LinkedIn. We've seen people talk about it. But I mean, as a recruiter, as someone who sees it day in and day out online, people are struggling. I
Yeah.
struggled. Like, I didn't know I was going to pursue Super Bloom Talent when the layoff happened. I really was kind of open to all options. I went out there, I started looking for jobs. I realized I was competing with a lot of other really, really talented and professional people who had also gone through the same thing as I had. And so for me, when I was laid off, I was the only person in my household bringing in an income.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was a stay-at-home dad for 2 years. And so that was daunting. We own a home. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
how do I how do I how do I do this? Like, what do
Hmm.
I do? And you start to internalize it. You start to feel like the rejections are, a part of who you are, or
Hmm.
they're your, like, I always say, like, it has nothing to do with your worth or what you can contribute to an organization. It's really a lot of it's, numbers, luck, networking. And so I remember sitting down with my husband and I'm like, all right, I'm not getting anywhere with finding full-time work. Like,
Hmm.
do you how much do you believe in me? Like, do you think that I can do this? Like,
Hmm.
will you bet on me as well? And I was
Yeah.
never going to say, like, let me start my own business without my husband's, backing,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we're a team.
Hmm.
And he, like, looked at me and kind of chuckled, like, yeah, of course. Like, you've done it before. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I mean, we haven't really talked too much about, like, my business partner, but she was also affected by a layoff the same time
Hmm.
as I was. And so I basically was like, all right, well, let me see if I have anyone, who's interested in pursuing this with me.
Hmm.
Um, and so, it's really been a journey. I still struggle with my self-confidence sometimes, and, like,
Hmm.
my just it, it's a mental thing, right? All of it's mental. It's like
Yeah.
being able to redirect your thoughts. It's being able to know that, like, when you are going through a storm, it's
Hmm.
temporary. Like,
Mm.
you will get out of that, and you will get through it. And that's what I've had to remind myself is, like, I'm so surprised by where I'm at today,
Hmm.
a little bit more than a year after that layoff, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's taken a while. It's still a work in progress, but um yeah, challenging stuff. And
Hmm.
it's also hard because even if you do get a job now, it's always that, like, what if in the back of your mind of, like, how stable and how, like, safe am I?
Mm.
And I think a lot of people have realized that big companies, they don't equal stability anymore. They don't
No.
equal, consistency. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of flipped things, upside down, where now I'm like, hey, let's look at these smaller companies.
Mm.
Yes, you might have historically seen them as not super stable, but you can build something and you can
Yeah.
be a part of something. You have such a big impact and learn and progress your career so much quicker than a larger organization where, you know, things aren't always super safe anymore.
Mm. Okay. Oh, there's a lot in there. And that's a big one. I mean, teamwork. Um, Having a business partner, because you've got to trust somebody else.
Yeah.
And you are a sole provider the mortgage company doesn't care that somebody has taken you
Mhm.
on for exposure. They don't get paid in exposure. You've got a baby,
Mhm.
and babies need a lot of things, a lot of little things, even the basics.
They
They
do.
grow like weeds. And what clothes they had now, all of a sudden, they're three-quarter pants. They don't even fit anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but here you are a year later, and you are still, I mean, there's still so much. I think if we say, let's do this again 6 months from now, a year from now, you're going
Mhm.
to have, this is a growing, I'm really excited about that. Actually, we're going to have to revisit this
Absolutely.
conversation
Absolutely.
because, oh my goodness, there's so much building on this that you're doing. So, and I can't help but notice just that natural passion and empathy and strategy in the way that you talk, in the way that you just operate, right? And I've had the opportunity to connect with your business partner, and she is amazing.
Mm.
And so seeing those synergies, so can you just like give a snippet then of how you're translating these experiences into supporting organizations and job seekers the Super Bloom Talent way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Yeah, I have a unique background professionally, but then personally, I mean, we've talked about a lot of it. And we've talked a little bit about it today, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I am very empathetic to people. And I think one thing that I've really focused on with Super Bloom Talent is we are putting people first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's over profits.
Mm-hmm.
That's, over exposure. That's over like, sometimes just the success of the business, if that's what that means. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we genuinely care about the success of businesses. And I think
Mm-hmm.
one thing we realized is when we first started out, we weren't as like sure that we were focusing on small businesses and startups.
Okay.
Um, since then, we've realized that's where our passion lies. And it's kind of that David versus Goliath, like, that fight. I love
Yes.
that. And I love rooting for the underdog. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we've really that's the direction we're going, is helping empower businesses that don't have the resources, don't always have the budget, and really don't know where to start when it comes to like attracting the talent that's going to drive their business forward.
Right.
So that is the biggest thing. Diversity is huge for me as well. And so we're
Mm-hmm.
always interweaving like equitable hiring practices throughout our process. I've had someone ask me, like, so do you have like a diverse, like, are you doing like a DEI company? And I'm like, no, no, no. It's just, it's interwoven into the fabric of our process. And we
Yes.
are helping set that foundation for small businesses and startups to be able to then scale a more diverse and inclusive team. So
Mm-hmm.
it's we're not doing DEI programs where we're helping people do it, more equitable um,
Mm.
through one-on-one coaching sometimes, which is fun. But then on the flip side, it's supporting the candidates through that process and letting them know too, like if I have the bandwidth, I am more than happy to hop on a call. And
Yeah.
I've been, I mean, we don't charge anything to candidates for resume revisions, feedback, anything like that. So
Mm.
anytime we can provide support in that way, whether that is taking a quick look at your resume and giving you some feedback, whether that's helping you with like job search strategies, because
Mm.
or even giving the inside look, like, hey, I know a lot of conversation around ATS has happened. It isn't this mystical thing. We are actually, as recruiters, looking at these. So we're looking
Yeah.
at your resume, and that's what matters. Um, and then being there as emotional support, saying, hey, I know, and I've been there, and
Mm.
it's not easy. And here are some things that can help. And so, yeah, we have a couple things that we're rolling out for candidates soon. We have a
Mm-hmm.
talent, like a group on LinkedIn we're going to start that's like a talent networking group. Um,
Mm.
and then we do have a document that we provide to candidates as well that just has a bunch of resources, whether
Yeah.
that's job boards, different job boards you can look at that are different than like LinkedIn and Indeed, right? Because those are
Mm.
clearly over like saturated.
Yes.
Um, and
And
then
some of
like
them not real posts. Yeah.
some of them are not, yes. Free resources that you can use that will like streamline the job search process. So that's some of the stuff that like we are doing and the steps we're taking at Superbloom to one, set ourselves apart a little bit and humanize
Hmm.
the experience, um, but to ensure that it aligns with our values. Uh,
Mm.
So yeah.
I love that because that is such a tailored experience and it's not for everybody.
Mm-mm.
If you only want to check off a box, or if you just want to go with whatever job is going to pay you whatever, but you're not really curating the experience, if you don't want your employees to stay, you don't want to encourage them to have a healthier work environment, if you don't want to be the difference,
Mhm.
and if you also don't, yeah, it doesn't make sense for them to go the super bloom talent way. It doesn't.
Nope.
Right. But if they do want to know where to start, and sometimes, people will just say, just start. But how? How exactly do we start? Right. So, needing a place to start. And I love what you said too about how you're helping candidates, not just with the resume, taking a quick look at the resume. Sometimes somebody just needs a confidence boost of, hey, you know what? That actually looks really awesome, right? You're
Yeah.
doing a great job. Or, hey, if you just tweak this a little bit, when I'm reading through it, as it comes through the ATS system, like this is what this might come across to look like. So just giving them that perspective is so
Yeah.
important, and having those resources. And the candidate is already a lot of times strapped for cash. So I love that there are some ways that you're able to do that at like, little to no cost for them to do
Mhm.
that. So I appreciate you just kind of sharing that on the fly. I think it's important for people to see, right, at the root of, if I'm going to bring in an organization to help on the recruitment side, on the talent search side, diversify my workforce, who is leading that organization? What are their values?
Mhm.
Do they align with what I'm looking for, what I'm trying to do, and where my growth is headed? Because if you don't know that part, if you don't know, yet they're the ones that are leading the strategy, then whatever they believe, whatever they value is going to translate into your company. And if it's not good, they've just helped you create a more toxic environment.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. So my last question, semi last question, is, well, what does wellness mean to you?
I'm still, I think my idea of wellness is still evolving. And I think
Mm.
I put myself on the back burner for a lot of years and I
Mhm.
was heads down. I want to be successful. I want to, get as far away from like my past as possible. And now I realize putting yourself first. And when I say putting yourself first, I mean, um, saving space for things that energize you and
Mhm.
not things and people that take that energy and that passion from you
Yep.
is what my idea of like wellness is. And I feel like physical and mental health, obviously, those two components like are super important. And so I'm figuring out how to make that work for me.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's the boundary piece, right? Like
Mm.
I care about you and I want what's best for you, but if that is interfering with what is best for me in this moment, um sometimes it is a no. And that
Yep.
doesn't mean I don't care or that I don't want to support. It just means right now there's more being taken from me
Yep.
than I can give. And that is something that I am still trying to work through, right? Like I am a giver through and
Mm.
through. And I've realized that I cannot be my best self if I don't take the time I need for myself to
Mm.
work on the things I need to work on. And then to be then able to come and bring what I'm learning and what I'm experiencing to other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And those boundaries, once you're firm of what that looks like, and now realizing I it's good. This thing is going to be good for you, but it's just not going to be coming from me to help you solve right now because
Correct.
I need for me to in order to keep functioning and doing my best. So boundaries are so important. We don't implement them enough. So often in our lives and in our time. And I think as business owners, it's really tough to set some of those boundaries, even along like honoring our work schedules or honoring what we say we're not going to do when a client is doing some scope creep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I appreciate that you brought that as an example. So my last question, my actual last question, I could go on. This is so awesome.
Same, same.
Um, so how do people get in touch with you? They've gotten to know you. They know, they have a little bit of a preview of who Danae is, what Super Bloom Talent is about. But I know that one, I'm just going to put in a plug. Y'all just got an awesome new website, and it looks really, really good,
Thank you.
including the content is also really, really good. So I'm going to link that in the show notes anyway. But how would you like the people to connect
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can always go onto our website. We do have the option to schedule some time. I would say LinkedIn is probably my preferred method. I
Mm,
live on there and constantly monitor my inbox. So if you come, drop me a DM, I'd be happy to respond. If you want to
hmm
connect, I'm happy to connect. And then, like I said, I have those resources we do provide to candidates that are free that will give you um, some insight and some background from people who are, working in the space. But I'd say that's the easiest thing. And thank you for the compliment on the website. It was our contracting team did a great job. So I appreciate that.
Of course, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing those resources. I'm going to link them in the show notes so you all can easily access them. And this episode will be available on YouTube so you can see us live. If you're hearing our voices and want to see our faces, we are going to be on YouTube. And then if you just want to play along on your radio or on your phone, wherever, on your way to the grocery store, to work. We will also be on Spotify, on YouTube Music, as well as on Apple Podcasts. So, really excited and so grateful that you've been a part of this conversation, Danae. Thank you again for taking the time to be on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And I'd love to do it again down the road and talk about how things have changed or any ways that I can support, you know, everyone out there.
That is a must. We're going to put it on the calendar. That is a
Sounds good.
must. And as for the rest of our amazing audience, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Wellness with EAC. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe to whatever platform you're listening on. Leave us a review, leave us a comment. What episodes would you like us to film in the future? What guests do you want us to bring in? I am open. My inbox is open. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a DM, or you can just check us out on our website as well. So until next Wednesday, take good care and be well.